What are you looking at, if you don't mind me asking? Oh, I don't mind. Some Canadian geese there in the water. Oh. It's not actually pronounced Canadian. It's actually called Canada Goose. Canada, Canadian, same thing. Well, it's not really the same thing. They're not really sure how it was named, whether it was named after the country or somebody's last name. So if you say Canadian, you imply that they're from Canada, like they're here on vacation. Hey, what are you fellas looking at? Canadian geese. It's actually Canada. Okay, Canada. Are you happy now? I'm gonna head out and you should probably look into getting a life. I don't need a life. People call it by what it's supposed to be called. It's Canada Goose. May as well call it an Argentinian goose or a dragon or a unicorn for that matter. I don't need to get a life. You need to get a life. That's what I should have said. Jerk store. Are you talking to me?
In this video, I'll be featuring several species of geese found in North America, but not all of them, and I'll discuss some identifying features of the more difficult to distinguish species, with the biggest two being the Canada Goose versus the Cackling Goose, and the Snow Goose versus the Ross's Goose. I would venture to guess that, for many of us, our first encounters with geese were as kids, seeing large V-shaped flocks flying either south for the winter or north for the summer. I can't recall exactly, but my parents, who were not birders, explained to me that geese flying south meant winter was on its way, while geese flying north meant that warmer temperatures were on the way. There's a little more to it than that, but that's the gist of it. Every time I see these large flocks in the sky, I am reminded of those first views as a kid. I'll start with perhaps the most commonly seen goose in North America, the Canada Goose. I would imagine when most people hear the word goose, they think of this one. Either this or some species of domestic goose, often seen at municipal parks. The Canada Goose may just be one of the most recognized water birds in North America, second only to the mallard. These geese often make loud honking sounds, especially in flight, which has earned them the nickname honkers. The Canada Goose is large, but varies quite a bit in maximum size, ranging from 30 to 44 inches in length, with wingspans from 4 to about 6 feet. The body is brown overall, darker above and lighter below. It has a long black neck and head, along with a white chin strap, as seen here. Canada geese vary widely in size, as there are 7 primarily large-bodied subspecies and 4 small-bodied subspecies. The 4 small-bodied subspecies are now recognized as cackling geese. However, even with the split of the two species, the Canada Goose exhibits morphological variation in size and coloration among subspecies. In other words, both the Canada Goose and the Cackling Goose vary in size. Essentially, the Cackling Goose looks like a small Canada Goose, as far as coloration goes. You would think the size difference alone would be enough to distinguish the two, but there isn't always an obvious size difference between a larger Cackling Goose and a smaller Canada Goose. For instance, look at this photograph. There were several Cackling Geese mixed in with a flock of Canada Geese. This individual in the foreground was noticeably smaller than many of the Canada Geese. It was nearly as small as the Cackling Goose, but the bill didn't look right. The Cackling Goose has a noticeably stubbier bill, as seen here. I would even say that the Cackling Goose's entire head has a stubby look. Let's look at this side-by-side comparison. Typically, the Cackling Goose has a steep forehead, while the Canada's forehead is more sloped. However, that can sometimes be a gray area as well, so I believe it is best to focus on the bills. But one thing I've learned from all the years of trying to distinguish between these two birds is, when I see a Cackling Goose, it's surprisingly evident that it is indeed a Cackling Goose. But if I need to analyze over and over to distinguish whether or not it's a cackling goose, it's usually a small Canada goose. Look at this photograph. It's a mixed flock of geese, including Canada, cackling, and greater white-fronted. It's kind of a birder's dream to find something like this on day one of a big year. In a video I made about that big year, I identified this individual bird as a cackling goose, but I've since second-guessed that determination. Maybe it's just the way the bird is facing, but the bill to me looks a tiny bit long to be a cackling goose. Look at the other cackling geese. Here, 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 and even this little bugger right here. It's obvious that they are cacklers, but not with this bird. So, to err on the side of caution, I'm going to call it a Canada A, even though it may be a cackling goose. Before I get to the snow goose, let me talk about a medium-sized, fairly obscure bird, the greater white-fronted goose. Although generally smaller than the Canada goose, the greater white-fronted goose is stocky. It occurs across the northern hemisphere, and in North America is mainly found west of the Mississippi River. The greater white-fronted goose resembles the gray-lag goose, which in the United States is usually a domesticated variety seen on farms and in municipal parks. However, the greater white-fronted goose is rather nervous and tends to shy away from people. Additionally, they often hang with other geese species in mixed flocks. A good example of that we just saw in this photograph. The greater white-fronted goose ranges in length from 25 to 32 inches, is brown overall, has various amounts of black splotches on the belly and breast, and has a white face for which it is named. One day, while observing this flock of greater white-fronted geese flying through the air, I noticed some smaller Canada types with them. Based on the sizes and the stubby faces and bills, I determined that they were cackling geese. However, I have no idea what was going on over here. No idea. Do you know? Because I certainly don't. It appears this bird's head is upright, but the body is, Because
I was inverted.
Oh, okay. What do you think that goose was eating before it took flight? What kind of crop did it get into?
And now, on to the snow goose. The snow goose is one of the species that forms huge flocks and is often seen flying overhead in the fall, winter, and spring. Snow geese numbers have skyrocketed, and they are now among the most abundant waterfowl on the continent. The snow goose is so named as it usually has pure white plumage, as seen here. However, there is a blue phase, sometimes called a blue goose, that is less common. It was long considered a separate species, but is now known only to be a color morph. While seeing a goose or two may not be impressive, especially since we see so many domesticated geese at local parks, watching wild geese when the flocks are massive is something else. And when these gargantuan flocks take to the air, it is quite a spectacle. See, isn't that awesome? However, if you find yourself underneath one of these massive flocks, I suggest you break out an umbrella. For the most part, snow geese are white, as mentioned previously, save for the black primary wing feathers and pink legs and bills. At 27 to 33 inches in length, they are a bit smaller than most Canada geese. The blue phase has a dark body and white head, as seen here. The difference between the snow goose and the Ross's goose is similar to that of the Canada and the cackling. The Ross's goose is very similar in appearance to the snow goose, but at about 2 feet in length, it is noticeably smaller and has a stubby bill. Let's look at this side by side. Not only does the snow goose have a lengthier head, but also a black grin patch on the bill. The black grin patch is also referred to as lips. Kind of funny looking for lips. Almost looks like its mouth is on the side there. Hey, I'm a snow goose. What are you doing, taking my photo? I'm talking out of the side of my mouth. What do you know about that? Why don't you mind your own business? Anyway, you might sum it up like this. The Cackling Goose and the Ross's Goose look like the children of Canada and Snow Geese. Just my opinion. Additionally, the Ross's Goose also has a blue phase, which is quite rare. Here are the range maps for these birds, courtesy of the National Audubon Society. Each one is labeled, but remember, birds don't observe range map boundaries, so you may see them outside of this range. And I apologize, but I left out several species of geese found in North America, including the emperor goose, the brant, the pink-footed goose, and the barnacle goose. And I really only make videos about creatures I've observed and that I myself have filmed and photographed. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you.
Oh, hello. I'm Randy from Randy's Natural World. I hope you enjoyed the video on
Geese.
Yes, that's it. Today I'm pretending to be a scientist. Maybe I'm doing research on a 5 o'clock shadow, I'm not sure. But that's neither here nor there. I'm hoping to speak to those of you who haven't subscribed yet. Here's a list of reasons why you should. It's free. You can't beat that price. Number 2, quality content. Always quality content. Number 3, YouTube allows unlimited subscriptions, so there's no reason not to. Anyway, number 4, are you a procrastinator? There's no need to procrastinate. And I know what you're thinking. Randy, I'll subscribe when I get around to it. Well, here's your round to it right here. Round to it. So go ahead and subscribe. Go ahead. A wise decision.